Welcome everyone. If I can please ask all non-speakers to mute your microphones and we will begin. So welcome everyone to this event titled Hydrogen in Northwest Europe, Unlocking Opportunities Through Regional Collaboration. My name is Dan Dorner and I'm Head of Secretariat for the Clean Energy Ministerial, and it's an absolute pleasure for me to be the moderator for this event. I can tell you we've got a packed schedule crammed with amazing speakers focused around the launch of an excellent new report, Hydrogen in Northwestern Europe, a vision towards 2030. As we know, hydrogen is now firmly established as an important part of clean energy transition discussions around the world. It is a very versatile energy vector, which can be generated from different sources and used in many different applications. But what are the conditions that would make clean hydrogen generation viable, and what would lead to its much more rapid uptake? And while the supplies of clean hydrogen mature, making them cost-effective and incentivizing scale-up, the volumes of hydrogen will require consistent and well-defined demand for the same. Studies such as those from the IEA in 2019 have highlighted that a key to the uptake of hydrogen in the initial stages of this transformation will require dedicated centers of demand. And first, amongst others, identified industrial clusters, particularly those around ports, as key opportunity areas. One leading center for such well-defined generation and consumption possibilities for clean hydrogen is the Northwestern Europe region. As a result, a key activity of the Clean Energy Ministerial's Hydrogen Initiative, supported by co-lead governments such as the Netherlands and several participating members from the region, has been a detailed study undertaken to determine the possibilities for this region. The study was undertaken by the International Energy Agency, the IEA, and the Clingendael International Energy Programme, CIEP. And today we are here at the launch of this study and to learn of the outcomes. Now, Northwestern Europe might be one of the first regions in the world to develop a vision for clean hydrogen generation and use. And there is scope for many other regions around the world, such as in Asia Pacific, South America, and the Middle East, for example, to learn from its example and its experience. So without any further ado, let's get started with today's event, which is divided into 4 key parts. So we'll start today with some opening remarks from the sponsors and coordinators of this report. Then we'll have a presentation from the leads who conducted the study. This will then be followed by interventions from the governments who are participating in the region's hydrogen vision development. And I should say we have a really excellent panel, and I'm so grateful to them all for participating today. Closing remarks will be delivered by our good friend and colleague, Mr. Noé van Hulst, who chairs the IPHE, the International Partnership for Hydrogen and Fuel Cells in the Economy. And if I've learned anything in life, it's that Noé will always have, and probably always deserves, to have the final word. So I'm glad that he does today. I want everyone to please note that today's session is being recorded and will be available on demand at the 12th Clean Energy Ministerial. CEM 12 is hosted by the government of Chile this year and is taking place from the 31st of May to the 6th of June. It's also once again open to all, and so please do join us there. And with that, I now welcome the first speaker of the day, Mr. Niels Castelline, for his remarks. Niels is the Director of Climate Policy at the Dutch Ministry of Economic Affairs and Climate Policy, and has been closely involved with other regional members in the development of a common hydrogen vision. So Niels, please come to the stage. Over to you.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you very much for your introduction today. Good afternoon and welcome to all. Okay, I will share my video. Welcome to you all to this webinar on unlocking the opportunities for hydrogen through regional cooperation in Northwest Europe. I'd like to start with giving my compliments to the Hydrogen Initiative of the Clean Energy Ministerial for all the work that has been performed since the launch back in 2019, before many countries even have presented their own hydrogen strategies. Also, my compliments to the IEA and the CIEP for the study that will be presented today. In recent years, hydrogen has become one of the highest priorities in our European energy policies. And rightly so, given its essential role in the decarbonisation process of the European Union. From the Netherlands, we are very proud, as co-leader of the initiative and leader of the roundtable on the Northwest European region, to be here today to present a study performed by the IEA and the SIEP about the hydrogen market. It is crucial for us to bring stakeholders together and discuss the importance of developing a Northwestern European regional market, and more so, the specific steps needed to scale up hydrogen. After a virtual webinar in July 2020, it was decided to ask IEA and the SIEP to perform a market and policy study for us. The key point was to take a snapshot of the current market and the policies that can serve as a basis for monitoring the development of the Northwestern European hydrogen market. This way, we hope to lay the foundation for discussing the necessary policies, mechanisms, and investments to achieve the 2030 targets that have been defined recently in many strategies of our countries. For this process, it is crucial to generate transparency of the supply, demand, trade, and trade developments to enable policymakers, investors, producers, and consumers to take the right decisions. Our aim is to continue this monitoring process on a regular basis. And within this context, regional cooperation is crucial. Today, we already see important initiatives like the process of the important projects of common interest in the European Union to develop cross-border strategic value chains as part of the European hydrogen strategy. Also, cross-border initiatives and projects will be facilitated through the revision of the Trans-European Networks Directive. And besides regulations, many countries are already working together to develop the Northwestern European hydrogen market through creating cross-border infrastructure. Take, for example, the development of the European hydrogen backbone. Today, I am proud to be opening this session where the main findings of this study will be presented. And the involved countries, Belgium, Denmark, France, Germany, the United Kingdom, Norway, and the Netherlands will give a brief reaction to the study. This way, we think the region is well on track in establishing the foundations for scaling up the hydrogen market. And 2021 can be the year in which many countries in the region take important steps that will largely define the further deployment of hydrogen on our continent. I hope that the study and the discussion today will be fruitful in further identifying the necessary steps for making the great hydrogen leap forward, and thus making this region a global hydrogen frontrunner. I sincerely hope that you will enjoy today's presentation and discussion, and I would like to give final thanks to all that have contributed to the study and everyone participating today. Thank you very much.
That's perfect, Niels. Thank you very much. A great way to kick us off. I really must commend the Netherlands for its leadership on hydrogen and in the SEMS Hydrogen Initiative, a key space for the development of collaboration in this area and the opportunities and benefits for all. With no further ado, I'll welcome our second speaker and my colleague, Ms. Mechthild Vosthofer, who is the IEA's Director of Sustainability, Technology and Outlooks. Pleasure to see you again, Mechthild. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Dan, and dear ladies and gentlemen, it's also my great pleasure to be here today and open that event together with my colleague Niels Castelline from the Dutch Ministry of Economic Affairs. I would like to thank everyone involved and welcome all the participants, but also to thank in particularly the SEM Secretariat for all the tireless efforts to promote international collaboration under right now quite challenging circumstances. I think this event today is really an excellent example how we adapt our work and can continue with full speed ahead. It's also an example of how the Clean Energy Ministerial may help individual governments with the clean energy transitions and as we learn from each other. This webinar is about to find projects and discussions that brings an added value beyond what we manage on our own. It's very nice to see so many governments, all the 7 governments and the European Commission today, and many familiar faces. And I'm also very happy about the excellent cooperation between the IEA and the Clingendael International Energy Program. So why we are here today? The short answer is hydrogen. We are all aware that after having been ignored for too long by the energy sector, the increased climate and energy ambitions of governments around the globe have put hydrogen in the spotlight of the energy debate again. We all know hydrogen is a critical part of most clean energy transitions strategies around the world. And its use is expanded beyond the more traditional applications in refining and chemical sector to reach other sectors, such as long-distance transport, and in particular shipping and aviation, and also heavy industries, such as iron and steel. However, the challenge of scaling up low-carbon hydrogen production and use to the levels required to reach net zero emissions objective is not small, to say the least. Let me illustrate with two examples from our IEA analysis. In our sustainable development scenario, hydrogen demand will need to be 7 times larger than it is today. And water electrolysis capacity should grow from today's roughly 250 megawatt to more than 3,000 gigawatt. And as you might know, at the IEA, we are just now finalizing our global net zero 2050 roadmap, which we will release on the 18th of May. And you will see with the global net zero 2050 objective, these ambitions needs to accelerate even more. So this is a huge challenge that no one can face alone. We need strong international cooperation to facilitate this transformation. Governments and industry have been working together, and they need to build strong international partnerships, able to share some of the burden and build around the opportunities. That's why the IEA supported from its beginning the hydrogen initiative. It was mentioned at the SEM initiative, at the SEM meeting in Vancouver 2 years ago. I was there, and it seems like a long time ago, but we also were very happy as the IEA to be the coordinator of this initiative. We also welcome the creation of a working group for enhancing the collaboration among the countries in Northwest Europe as an example for other regions to follow to strengthen the hydrogen value chains. Hydrogen already plays a significant role in the industrial sector of this region, and the region will be critical for the scale up of low carbon hydrogen technologies, both at a global level, but also to achieve the European-wide climate and energy targets and the European Green Deal. This is particularly important in this pivotal year for energy and climate with the upcoming COP26 meeting in Glasgow. So let me conclude. We are supporting this endeavor, and that's why we are so pleased to present a special study here today together with the Clingendael International Energy Program. And I'm very happy that both Kobe van der Linde is there and my colleague José, who will present it. We very much hope that the finding can support the cross-border dialogue on regional hydrogen market in Northwest Europe and make others learn from each other. Thank you very much. Looking very much forward to the discussions.
Thank you so much for those remarks, Mechthild. You and your team are doing such a great job as a coordinator of the SEM's Hydrogen Initiative, and we really appreciate it. Also, IEA's analysis reminds us clearly and starkly that the scale up that is required in clean hydrogen, it's not incremental. If anything, it's monumental, and there is absolutely no time to delay. And indeed, it is great to hear about the setting up of the Northwestern Europe Working Group. It could, as you say, become a valuable model for other regions to follow. So given all of that context and those opening remarks, I now welcome Dr. Jose Bermudez and Dr. Kobe van der Linde to give us an overview about the study itself that they have led on behalf of the IEA and the Clingendael. Over to you, Jose, who, as many of you might know, also happens to be the lead coordinator of the SEM's Hydrogen Initiative. Floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dan. Just to confirm that now you should be seeing the slides that we have prepared for the launch of today.
We can.
Perfect, thank you. So good morning, afternoon, or evening to everyone, depending from where you are connecting. Today we are releasing this joint study that the International Energy Agency and the Clingendael International Energy Program have developed together. And in the next few minutes, we are going to summarize the main findings of this study, where we have tried to explore the status of hydrogen in the Northwest European region and how the sector could evolve from now till 2030. We are all aware that we are facing an unprecedented transformation towards a clean energy system that will require a wide variety of technologies and fuels. There is an increasing recognition in this context that low carbon hydrogen should play a key role in this transition, especially in those hard to abate sectors that, for example, Niels has just mentioned. In the case of the Northwest European region, there is a strong motivation for developing robust hydrogen industry by two main reasons. First, the governments on the region have put in place or adopted ambitious greenhouse gas emission reduction targets, which will require significant contribution from hydrogen technologies. Second, there is a strong political interest in hydrogen as an opportunity to maintain industrial activity in the region, which has been struggling with international competition for many years. Fortunately, Northwest Europe is well placed for scaling up low carbon hydrogen. It is home to the largest European industrial clusters and ports, which can serve as springboards for the deployment of low carbon hydrogen technologies. Moreover, the region is already home of more than 40% of Europe's hydrogen demand and around 5% of global hydrogen demand. There is in place already a well-developed gas infrastructure and an integrated gas market, which could serve as the seed of the development of a European-wide low-carbon infrastructure, low-carbon hydrogen infrastructure. And finally, the countries in the region are taking significant efforts to expand offshore wind capacities in the North Sea. The use of hydrogen could be an opportunity to absorb higher volumes of this wind generation into the energy system of these countries. This confluence of factors have created a strong momentum behind hydrogen, both from the governments and from industry. Governments have been working for a long time in developing their national visions about the role that hydrogen could play in their energy systems. On the industry side, there is a strong commitment for the development of hydrogen, and the region concentrates a significant number of projects for low carbon hydrogen production already under development. Moreover, the first developments for the creation of a European hydrogen backbone are expected to happen in these countries, where TSOs have been spearheading initiatives for the development of hydrogen infrastructure. Now let's take a look at today's hydrogen landscape in the region. More than 6 million tons of hydrogen are consumed every year in Northwest Europe, most of it in the form of pure hydrogen in refining and ammonia production. But also a significant amount of hydrogen is consumed mixed with carbon-containing gases in the chemical industry, in iron and steel production, or for the generation of heat and power with residual gases in industrial processes. Looking at the distribution of these demands, we can see that Germany and the Netherlands are the largest consumers, accounting together for around 60% of the demand of the whole region. Belgium, France, and the United Kingdom presents also significant hydrogen use, each of them accounting for around 10% of regional demand. Norway concentrates around 5% of this demand, mainly coming from the chemical sector, whereas Denmark has a small demand in refining. When we take a look at how hydrogen is produced, we can see that most of it comes as a byproduct from different industrial processes or from natural gas. Only a small fraction of the production incorporates carbon capture technologies, mainly in the integrated production of ammonia and urea in fertilizer industry. Finally, the contribution of other production routes, such as water electrolysis or biomass gasification, is limited to small demonstration projects. This means that less than 10% of the hydrogen production in the region uses low carbon production routes. This has important consequences in terms of CO2 emissions. To assess how the situation could evolve from now till 2030, we have defined two scenarios. First, a baseline scenario, considering those energy and climate-related policies that are already in place in these countries, as well as those mature projects that are quite likely to be successfully deployed from now till 2030. Also, an accelerated scenario based on the adoption of more ambitious energy and climate policies and the implementation of supporting schemes that could facilitate the adoption of hydrogen technologies in end uses of hydrogen. This accelerated scenario describes trajectories that are compatible with the achievement of the wider energy and climate targets in the region. In our baseline scenario, we can observe that there is an expected drop in traditional hydrogen demands. This is a consequence of the decline in the activity in the refining and the chemical sector in the region, in line with the decline observed in recent years due to international competition. Part of this demand could be compensated by the adoption of hydrogen technologies in new applications, mainly in transport by the deployment of fuel cell electric vehicles, and the iron and steel industry, where hydrogen can help in replacing small fractions of coal and gas in existing facilities. They show us that the already existing policy framework can drive small changes in the current hydrogen landscape, but is not enough to reach the ambitious transformation needed to deliver the decarbonisation goals. Under an accelerated scenario, however, the situation can change dramatically. By 2030, the drop in traditional demands is larger than in the baseline scenario. This is mainly pushed by lower demand in refining, thanks to a more aggressive deployment of battery electric vehicles and fuel cell vehicles. However, this demand drop is more than compensated by the adoption of hydrogen in new applications, which could push up demand for hydrogen above 8 million tons every year. This is mainly driven by an ambitious deployment of fuel cell electric vehicles, especially in heavy-duty transport, along with the adoption of hydrogen and hydrogen-derived fuels in rail and shipping. Widespread blending of hydrogen and synthetic methane into the gas grid, a more ambitious adoption of hydrogen in iron and steel making to replace fossil fuels, and certain use of hydrogen in flexible power generation to provide backup to the large deployment of variable renewables. On the supply side, the difference between the two scenarios are even more remarkable. Under the current policy landscape, few projects for the deployment of low carbon hydrogen production will be able to reach final investment decision. This means that the technology mix for producing hydrogen will remain quite similar to today's, with just small changes, for example, electrolysis, making modest inroads, reaching around 6% of total dedicated hydrogen production. However, the shares of fossil-based production, both with and without CCUS, will remain unchanged. In the accelerated scenario, however, a strong transformation in the production of hydrogen would take place. Natural gas would still meet 3/4 of this dedicated production, but at least half of it would use carbon capture. In addition, water electrolysis could meet more than 20% of dedicated production. In this situation, low carbon routes will be able to meet more than half of the dedicated hydrogen supply, up from less than 10% today. In the study, we have also assessed the possible creation of a regional hydrogen market, which will depend strongly on the extent to which this transformation in the sector takes place. In this sense, governments could play a crucial role in the development of hydrogen infrastructure that will be fundamental to facilitating the delivery of hydrogen to its end users. Today, the vast majority of hydrogen demand in the region is met by on-site production in captive uses, or from the use of byproduct hydrogen in the same facilities in which it is produced. Less than 10% of the hydrogen demand is met by hydrogen which the industry sourced externally, or what we call merchant hydrogen. In our baseline scenario, the situation will remain practically unchanged by 2030, with the majority of hydrogen still coming from captive applications and by the use of byproduct hydrogen. The use of merchant hydrogen could double, meeting between 7 and 14% of the demand, but this expansion may not require the development of a regional hydrogen market. However, under the accelerated scenario, merchant hydrogen could meet between 1/4 and 1/3 of the demand by 2030, or between 2 and 3 million tons of hydrogen every year. This is up to 7 times more than today, thus definitely requiring the development of such a regional market. Under this accelerated scenario, the need for this market is not only justified by technological developments in the region, but also due to the significant differences that the countries present at the moment of creating new demands or new low carbon hydrogen production capacities. Some countries in the region can develop larger capacities that will exceed their demand, thus becoming potential hydrogen exporters, while others may be unable to meet their demand with domestic production, thus becoming potential importers of hydrogen. It seems clear that the countries in the region would benefit from cooperating with the objective of developing cross-national initiatives that could exploit these complementarities. It is also important to know that with the current pipeline of projects, although it is large, the national targets for low carbon hydrogen production that some governments in the region have announced in their strategies will not be met. If these targets were to be met, the individual situation in some countries can shift significantly. Moreover, in certain cases, this could make the difference between becoming an importing or an exporting country. Looking at the regional balance, in both situations, although to a different extent, the whole region is likely to require to import hydrogen from third countries to meet its demand. Establishing collaborations now with these other countries or these other regions that could become hydrogen exporters by 2030 can help in laying the foundations for future international supply chains. This collaboration should be established as soon as possible, since the development of such supply chains within only 10 years is a challenging endeavor. Now, let me hand over this presentation to Kobe van der Linde, Director of the Clingendael International Energy Program, who will explain you the policy landscape in the region. Kobe, over to you.
Thank you very much, Jose. Yes, if you look at this table, then of course you run the risk, since we finished collecting the changes in February of this year, that it's already outdated because things are moving fairly fast in some countries. But if you bear with me, then it's quite clear, Jose just mentioned that there is a potential for regional trade in terms of where the projects are and what the potential is. And also, if you look at the trade gap analysis, that it could create a level of comfort for to have regional, as we can say, domestic or in the region produced hydrogen, in addition to the potential imports that are also required based on this analysis. If we look at the countries, then we see that most countries in the region have already published their hydrogen strategy, or is very close to publishing this strategy. Most of the strategy have actually already been committed with a budget, with maybe perhaps the exception of the Netherlands, where a limited budget so far has been allotted, but this is also in the works, as we understand. If you look at the regional creation of the market, it's very important that across countries, and where they can benefit from perhaps pooling the projects, because it makes the investment in interconnection infrastructures to carry the hydrogen from production sites to markets easier to realize than when each country just develops this on its own for its own national purposes. And I think that's where the highly integrated gas markets of today, and the industrial concentration that we see in Northwest Europe might be a very helpful thing, where industry could perhaps be the flywheel also of these developments in other demand sectors. If we then go to the recommendations on the next slide, please. Then it is clear that countries sometimes have a mixed strategy, in terms of that some countries fully would like to develop the capacities in electrolyzer hydrogen, while others have a more mixed strategy in terms of also using natural gas and refinery off gases or flue gases to produce hydrogen with CCS. we see that there's a large unused potential to cooperate across the borders. And this can actually be built on the current collaborations like the North Seas Energy Cooperation. But we also see, we saw already last year that the Pentalateral group also published its hydrogen strategy. So there is a lot of collaboration going on. And what is clear from the policies is that the next step is also to see how you can actually reinforce each other's hydrogen policies by coordination. And that identification is very important to create an integral regional market. And what is needed there is perhaps a common framework or regulatory framework and standards. Exactly what the certification. Also, some projects suffer from the fact that if they want to develop a project based on taking power from the grid, that it's which is in an intermediate step, perhaps it's good for developing the much higher capacity electrolyzer, but in terms of the power mix would temporarily not work. So there's a lot of kind of detail which makes it sometimes difficult to get projects off the ground, and it would really help if countries collaborate and then set common standards so that these projects have a good chance to get to market. The same goes, and that of course is also when it comes to advanced technology frontiers and the market size scale up. In terms of production, we see quite a lot of projects being in a study phase and bringing it closer and closer to investment decision. There is some issue with competition with regard to other supplies. In terms of helping the companies to make the decision, but there's also issues that also demand need to be organized or helped a little bit. And this could be that, for instance, in legislation, there's something like that there's a specific legislation in a country what is a gas for transportation or what is a gas for low temperature heating. These need to be adapted, and sometimes that takes time. And I think it would be good if countries could see what they could do so that this first phase until 2030, things can be helped along. Also, I think it's important to understand that the phase until 2030, which is the accelerated phase, is really crucial because these are the first really big steps in order to decarbonize hydrogen production of today, but also to create a new hydrogen production. And I think it would really be helpful if we can make major joint steps here in terms of developing the full value chain capacities. And I would like to leave it here.
Brilliant. Thank you, Kobe. Thank you, Jose. Very, very impressive. Congratulations to you and all of the contributors on a great and very timely piece of work. Northwest Europe gives us a lot of insights into the kinds of opportunities that collaboration within a region with differentiated resources and potentials can achieve to the benefit of all. The abundant renewable energy in the North Sea, the ready available gateways through well-developed ports, and defined energy demand potential in the region highlight the possibilities from this collaboration. More broadly, I have to say, personally, I feel that this analysis and this report is a good example. It shows how the importance of more granular, detailed analysis that all regions are clearly going to need as they seek to build their clean hydrogen markets. Now, I should just say at this point to anyone that has questions on this presentation and this report, we may not have time to address them all here today. We do, as I said at the outset, have a very packed agenda, but if we don't, we will absolutely note them and seek to respond to you directly. So moving on to the next stage in our agenda today, this presentation clearly sets up an interesting dialogue amongst the various policy leads from the different countries in this region. And in that vein, I'd like to invite the first speaker on our panel, Bjorn Horstadt, Director General at the Ministry of Petroleum and Energy from Norway. It's a pleasure to have you here with us today, Bjorn. I will ask that all speakers in this panel discussion seek to keep their remarks to under 4 minutes if possible. But with that, Bjorn, the floor is yours.
And thank you so much. I hope you hear me loud and clear. And thank you so much for this timely report. I will come back to that, of course. The Norwegian government launched a hydrogen strategy last summer, and we are currently developing a roadmap for hydrogen as a concrete follow-up of that strategy. Both are motivated by the government's triplet ambitions for climate gas reductions, energy transition, and industry development. We feel quite strongly a chicken and egg problem concerning investments in production capacity of low emission hydrogen and investments in use of hydrogen. Thus, the Norwegian strategy highlights that it's crucial that we now ensure that we produce enough volumes of clean, low emission hydrogen at the lowest possible cost. We believe this is best secured by competitive energy markets with efficient pricing of greenhouse gas emissions. We thus strongly believe that green and blue hydrogen are complements rather than substitutes for the foreseeable future. Hence, we also believe that demand-side instruments for stimulating transition to low-emission hydrogen should be technology neutral. However, immature technologies and high costs across the whole hydrogen value chain are central barriers for making hydrogen a commercial success. The Norwegian government therefore aim to increase R&D as well as the number of pilot and demonstration projects. We believe firmly in market-based solutions, but we also recognize the role of governments in making a new market function. And even if the market for hydrogen as such is well established, a market for low-emission hydrogen is yet to become commercially viable. Even so, there are already many promising pilot and demonstration projects in the pipeline, particularly in the maritime sector, but also in the production of low and zero emission hydrogen. International collaboration will play a crucial role in establishing a functioning low emission hydrogen market. This report is thus timely and important as it helps reduce uncertainties. It's very useful to read about other countries' plans and prospects, and it's also useful to read what sense you make of the Norwegian position and endeavors. And the report certainly facilitates better international collaboration. I would like to highlight the study's emphasis on the need for a long-term CO2 pricing framework with clear and consistent policy signals for industry players, combined with measures that ensure a level playing field for a trade-exposed industry. I look forward to follow the discussions, and I would like to thank the Netherlands for initiating this dialogue and the IEA and CF for this study. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Bjorn. It's great to see that this work is getting high-level attention in Norway. Also, thank you for sharing the insights of the work underway in Norway. We've certainly been very impressed with some of the leading work that Norway has been undertaking also in the area of carbon capture and storage, and look forward to joining up efforts there. So without any hesitation, may I now call upon Director General Laurent Michel, who's the Director General at the Ministry of Ecological Transition in France, for his next intervention. As many of you know, France has been one of the first countries in the world to develop a hydrogen plan and roadmap almost 4 years ago now. And so we're really pleased to see this connection in terms of regional collaboration. And with that, Laurent, please join us here today, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the organization of this meeting and the presentation of the study, which was very interesting. Yes, as you said, 4 years. Oh, sorry. 4 years after having approved a plan in 2008, 3 years, sorry, in 2018, we have now a plan, a strategy announced last September, and it includes 7 billion euros of public support to develop both production of renewable and decarbonated hydrogen through especially electrolysis of water, and also develop usages first for the decarbonization of industry, but also for heavy vehicle fleets. As in other countries, we have stated that at the present time, the additional cost of hydrogen cannot be met by simply investment support, and it's therefore necessary to provide support to ensure sufficient profitability and visibility for the investors, but also while minimizing the cost of public support. That's why we therefore foresee a public support mechanism with the organization of call for tenders for renewable or low carbon hydrogen production facilities, so that the winners of this call for tenders may receive operating aid and also possibly investment support, the criteria being specified in the regulation and in the tender specifications. But we hope that through this competitive process and through the improvement of the technology, we will be able to diminish the cost of low carbon hydrogen and the cost of decarbonization. That's why also we'll support research efforts in the field of hydrogen, both for production, but also for components for users. What the study has shown, in our opinion, is that we can have a good axis of cooperation between different member states to provide the necessary impulse so that we can progressively build cross-border projects and frameworks. We feel that it's crucial to establish common definitions, rules, certifications, and standards over the entire value chain. And it's something we can now work on in the European works on taxonomy or also in the 10E regulation project. Perhaps just some highlights on topics that can be discussed in the coming months and years. First, what kind of infrastructure? At the present time, we think that we have to encourage the production and the proximity use of hydrogen, but we are convinced that we have to have a global discussion on transportation and distribution of hydrogen infrastructures, and also the necessity to have this reflection taking into account the energy coupling opportunities between gas, hydrogen, and electricity. That's why it's obvious that a future hydrogen transport infrastructure, for instance, will be needed, and that it can be a good idea to assess the opportunity to repurpose the existing natural gas assets for pure hydrogen transport in a sure way, of course. What will be the timing of this deployment? We don't know, and we have to evaluate that, and in function of the viability of the uses we will develop. But also there are many possibilities, perhaps not only regulated assets, but also infrastructures that would be financed directly by industrials. That's why regarding regulation of infrastructures, we think it's an important topic we have to discuss. We think it's too early to have a final statement of what this regulation will be. And perhaps in the first step, perhaps to keep enough flexibility to be able to facilitate projects on these topics so that people who want to take their risk, for instance, could be allowed to launch their projects. Also, questions we'll have to address could be, for instance, be very cautious on cross-subsidization between different activities. That's what I wanted to say in some words, and I will stop there not to be too long. Thank you.
That's really perfect, Laurent. Thank you so much. And an excellent reminder of the need to think of both of national strategies, but also regional collaboration, and even to put it in the global context, especially when thinking about things like transportation infrastructure. So very welcome points there. With that, I move to Mr. Ulrich Benterbusch, the Deputy Director General at the German Ministry for Economic Affairs and Energy. Ulrich, it's great to have you with us today. As many of us know, Germany launched a very impressive hydrogen roadmap last year, just ahead of the 11th Clean Energy Ministerial, And it'll be good to hear from you today about how you see alignment between that roadmap and regional collaboration. Over to you, Ulrich.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dan. And thank you for organizing this conference. And of course, a big thanks to the Netherlands and to IEA for the initiative, on this study, which is really not only very timely, but the results are also extremely encouraging as regards hydrogen and its future, not only in Europe, but also globally. Yes, then you mentioned we have published our hydrogen strategy almost a year ago, roughly 11 months now. And it's just unbelievable what has happened in the last year concerning activities regarding implementation. We have had our call for IPCEI projects, important projects of common European interests, as many of you will know. And the result was just stunning. We received 230 project proposals and an investment volume behind it for more than 100 billion euro. A lot of support also, 40 billion. But it is really amazing to see how engaged all sectors of the industry are, be it chemicals, be it the heating sector, be it transport, all across the country. That is really something we have never observed before, I would say, that kind of enthusiasm. And that has to do with the fact that all the stakeholders, be it government, be it industry, be it NGOs, are deeply convinced that we don't have the new silver bullet to solve all our problems. But CO2-free hydrogen is absolutely mandatory to reach carbon neutrality. And this conviction has led to this kind of huge engagement. So we are now screening the IPCEI projects, and the matching procedure will start in May at European level. And we do hope that together with our European partners, by the end of this year, early next year, we will get the green light from the Commission and can start the implementation of projects. I want to stress one criteria that we will pay attention to when we select projects now, and that is, the infrastructure component, because we would like to select the projects in a way that we choose different puzzles, but infrastructure-wise, they should fit together so that we get the first long-distance transportation grid for pure hydrogen through these projects and the green light for these projects. At the same time, we have now in Parliament the first changes as regards our energy law with regard to gas infrastructure, because we, of course, need to change the regulation to give the industry the possibility to retrofit and reuse natural gas pipelines now for hydrogen. And we expect that law to pass before the elections so that it will not hinder any projects to start while the new government will be formed in autumn. We are also discussing a lot with the industry, with stakeholders, the question of how to finance the new infrastructure. And there is forming a view that we do think that the gas infrastructure and the hydrogen infrastructure in the longer run should be viewed as an entity and not treated as two different separate items, and that for that we need different regulations. So we see it more as a unity for different reasons. I will not go into this at this point in time here, but that's something we do think would have a lot of value added. And of course, at this point in time, we'll also need regional infrastructure. But as I've said on the outset, we also will need long distance infrastructure to transport hydrogen from the coast, in particular, from harbors to the industrial centers be it in the Ruhr area or, for example, in the east in Halle-Leuna, for example. We are developing also our regulation because it is not only necessary to support projects via capital subsidies, we will also need the right regulation, be it regarding cost, where we have to reduce the EEG surcharge, which is of course a very important chunk. But we will also need to define the green electricity, what is really green, and we need to have, at least in this decade, I would say, rather flexible approach here. It should not be too strict because if we are too strict, then we will have in the end, when it comes to green electricity, in particular from wind, a bottleneck which will not be helpful. So for example, we do think that windmills that are not anymore under the regime of our renewable energy law should also qualify in the framework of PPA agreements for green hydrogen production. So there is a lot going on. There is a lot of regulation still in the pipeline, and we do hope that we will finish it and get it through the parliament, before the summer break comes up. There is a lot we can discuss, but one thing is, I think at the end of my short intervention, mandatory. The European collaboration is a must. We need to harness the resources that we have, and this can't be done by one country alone. We can only achieve it together. Thank you very much.
Brilliant, Ulrich. That's very, very well said. And I do have to say, I mean, 230 project proposals, 100 billion euros investment proposals. That's really eye-catching. That's amazing. And I think certainly helps put to bed any idea of this being another hydrogen hype cycle. If anything, helps put that to bed any more seriously than the fact that people are willing to put very serious money, very serious investment. It shows that now really is the time and people are taking this very seriously. Thank you so much. So now I'm going to go back to Niels in this capacity representing the Netherlands as one of the members developing this collective regional vision. So Niels, if I can invite you back for some more reflections. Over to you.
Yes, thank you, Dan, and the other panelists for presenting their views today, which is very good to hear. I think the report that has been produced contains a strong call to action for all of us, because we can see that a rapid development of the regional market is absolutely necessary to fulfill the decarbonization goals we all have, both in general as well as specifically the industrial sectors that will need hydrogen. The main challenge is, in our view, to reduce costs quickly and also mobilize investments from the private sectors. And in my brief time, I would like to stress three key points. The first point is that we need to integrate regional hydrogen infrastructures, as many of you have said. In the Netherlands, we're looking at repurposing the existing gas infrastructure for that. But another very important issue in the Netherlands is expanding the offshore renewable generation capacity and integrate it with hydrogen production. We just need a lot more of renewable energy in the next decade and the next 3 decades. And a large part will come from offshore production. Also, system integration should be on our priority list by coupling offshore wind through electrolysis and bringing sustainable electrons and molecules to end users. And in this aspect, we view energy shared islands in the North Sea as a very promising issue. And also, the regional market is important, we think, but maybe perhaps in 2030, we will see gaps in the regional hydrogen supply. So we need to develop an import infrastructure, including maritime applications, bunkering, and preparing our ports for receiving large amounts of hydrogen in different forms. And within Europe, we see, for example, member states such as Portugal and Spain as important potential producers of hydrogen. And those are already exploring their ways to bring part of their future production to the ports in Northwestern Europe. And another important point from the Dutch perspective is that, of course, our focus is on producing renewable hydrogen in the longer term, but to kickstart the market and for the short term, we foresee an important transitional role for blue and low carbon hydrogen as well. Those are the points regarding the creation of an integrated regional hydrogen structure. Another point, which was also stressed from the German perspective, is that we will need to develop regional strategic value chains. And also our IPSAI program regarding hydrogen has also led to a lot of proposals. The call of interest has already delivered 65 projects, which we will be clustering into 4 large value chains for matchmaking. And we are already in contact with many other governments of this part of Europe to create these value chains. That might be a complex issue, but it's important to mention that there's a strong willingness from the Dutch side to develop those. And our third important issue is that the regulatory framework regarding hydrogen should be flexible to facilitate the transformation from the current markets to a more liquid market. And that should also include a new hydrogen exchange platform, such as that of gas and electricity. We know that the EU is currently reviewing many regulations, and we think that's important to allow the needed investments from both private and public sectors to generate those, and of course to fill the price gap, create supportive financial mechanisms, both from the national and the European government. And while of course allowing for a level playing field. We look forward to cooperating beyond the already existing cooperation to tackle the challenges together. And thank you all for your kind attention.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Niels. And thank you so much to everyone who's commenting in the chat, including all of those who are really praising this excellent work. I'm sure the authors will really appreciate it. And thanks to Niels for those very good specific points there regarding actions in the Netherlands and the actions that the Netherlands wants to see. Really great for us all to hear. So with that, I know that we now have a recorded intervention from Ms. Stephanie Murphy, who's the Director of the UK's Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. I know she wanted to be here today, and she's recorded this intervention to show how supportive she is of this work. So can we please have her recorded intervention? Thank you.
My name is Stephanie Murphy, and I'm Director for Industrial Energy in the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy in the UK government. My directorate has responsibility for the hydrogen economy for the UK, so I'm really glad to be talking to you here today. I'm really sorry I'm not able to join the event in person, but very much look forward to hearing the points that are raised and getting a readout of the rest of the discussion. The IEA's Northwest Europe study and this discussion come at a really exciting time for hydrogen from the UK perspective. We recently announced the UK's world-leading new emissions reduction target, a huge 78% reduction on 1990 levels by 2035. This builds on our ambitious NDC target of 68% reduction by 2030. We're very proud of this level of ambition, which has been made possible by the unprecedented reductions we've already made to date. Hydrogen is a key part of how we're going to get to our new 2035 target. The UK Prime Minister's 10-point plan for a green industrial revolution, published last November, signalled the UK's ambition on hydrogen. It announced a target of 5 gigawatts of low-carbon hydrogen production in the UK by 2030, a net zero hydrogen fund worth £240 million to support scaled-up production, and a net zero innovation portfolio that will provide £1 billion of support to low carbon technologies, with hydrogen one of 10 priority areas. In the next few months, we will publish the UK's hydrogen strategy, which will set out in detail how we will make a hydrogen-enabled low carbon future a reality. The strategy will set out how we plan to develop and scale up a UK hydrogen economy during the 2020s, driving investment, innovation and confidence at the pace needed to unlock hydrogen's potential to get us to net zero by 2050. And it will take a whole system, full value chain approach, covering how the system will work from production to distribution and end use, with appropriate support and regulation from government. The strategy will also make clear that international collaboration is a crucial part of our hydrogen vision. We believe we can get the world to net zero faster through pooling our research expertise, through developing common standards, policy and regulation that can allow our systems to join up for maximum benefit, through demonstrating strong local and global demand and creating a clear pull factor that facilitates investment and innovation in production and use of low carbon hydrogen. Northwest Europe is particularly important to us in all of the above. Why? Well, our Northwest partners are our closest neighbours. We're interconnected, in some cases literally, when it comes to our energy system. We share strong expertise both in R&I and R&D, but also in relevant current sectors like oil and gas, which brings us common challenges as opportunities. Together, we are already leading in key international fora, working to advance hydrogen technologies. For example, we are leading contributors in mission innovation, whose exciting next phase offers huge scope to build on our record of success to date. We share common geological characteristics that make hydrogen production from renewable energy and subsequent storage really viable at scale. Our commercial leaders are already working together, building on collaboration in areas like offshore wind. Tomorrow's discussions will provide more insight on how governments and industries can work together to seize the next generation of opportunities. The hydrogen leaders of Northwest Europe are therefore willing to make strong contributions, not only to production, distribution and end use at home, but also to developing hydrogen's potential with respect to areas like shipping, ports, transportation and storage support. These are crucial areas if we are to unlock hydrogen's maximum potential and create a truly global hydrogen economy. So in conclusion, we strongly welcome the IEA's reflections on how best to seize the opportunities for Northwest European collaboration on hydrogen. We look forward to digesting its findings in full alongside our closest partners and to taking forward detailed discussions following the publication of the UK hydrogen strategy. Thank you very much.
There we go. Really great to hear from the UK. Very specific hydrogen targets as part of very ambitious emissions reductions goals. And great to see that from the country hosting the critical COP26 meeting later this year. So next, I'm pleased to say we've got Jane Christensen from Denmark. Jane is the head of division in the Danish Energy Agency that is overseeing the policy rollout on hydrogen. So please, Jane, over to you.
Thank you very much, and thank you also for inviting us to this interesting seminar. Denmark is very ambitious in regard to solve the problems with climate change. The Danish government, backed by almost all parties in parliament, has set a target of 70% greenhouse gas emissions reductions by 2030 compared to 1990, and net zero emissions by 2050. The main path to reach the targets is electrification and use of increased production of renewable electricity from wind and solar. However, electrification has its limits, and especially in industries and heavy transportation, we need to find other solutions. Together with carbon capture and storage, green hydrogen is an important solution. The development of national as well as European hydrogen market will only have a minor impact in relation to the 2030 target. But it is definitely important to develop a hydrogen market to support the target of being CO2 neutral by 2050. The Danish government has decided to construct 2 energy islands, which will exploit our immense wind resources in the North Sea and the Baltic Sea. Thereby, Denmark will be able to produce a large volume of green electricity, the P in Power to X. Later this year, the Danish government will publish 3 strategies: one for Power to X, one for CCS, and one for the future of the existing gas infrastructure. Denmark has already a long tradition of integrated energy planning and has the expertise to work with gas combined with a well-integrated gas infrastructure with access to storage. The demand for hydrogen in Denmark is currently rather limited, and the expectation is that in the absence of targeted initiatives, it will continue to be minor. However, Denmark has and will get even larger resources in green electricity in the future, and one obvious possibility is to use these resources to generate hydrogen and other projects as e-fuels. During the last years, several large-scale projects with electrolyzers have been announced, and many of those projects will produce different e-fuels. To sum up, Denmark has the potential to produce large volume of green hydrogen to export, and the hydrogen can be transported
I think we might have lost Jane there temporarily, but I think she was also just summing up. So apologies, Jane, if you're still with us. I'll just butt back in if I may. I have to say, when I used to work in the UK government, I used to use the phrase, no country is an energy island, even if that country actually is an island. I feel that Denmark has somewhat strained that phrase by building your own energy islands, but a very exciting prospect it is. So moving on in our agenda, next I'd like to call on Jan Hensmans from the Belgian Federal Public Service for Economy. So Jans, the floor is yours. I can't hear you, Jan.
Yes, now you should be able to hear me. I'm very sorry for this.
Perfect.
It was a little bit difficult to unmute myself. Well, let me start by thanking you and for having this opportunity. I'd like to start with some reactions on the study, and then we'll go on. I'll say some things on the importance of the development of a regional hydrogen market in Northwest Europe for the climate ambitions. Of course, we welcome the study, but for different reasons. It rightly points to our responsibility as a reason to look into hydrogen as a part of the puzzle to realize climate neutrality. Simply because as a region, and I'm talking about the Northwest European region, we have all the elements present and we are best placed within the EU as a region to be the pioneer and front runners in this sector. The study also points out the difference among the countries as a challenge as well as an opportunity. Such a cooperation, however, is already very well functioning within Penta and North Seas Energy Cooperation, which was already mentioned by Kobe, I think, where these topics are intensely discussed as well and will continue to be discussed in the future. Tackling this challenge together will be important for Belgium as our local renewable potential is very limited. On the other hand, we have important demand in refining and chemical sectors in Belgium, the so-called hard-to-abate sectors that could support the uptake of hydrogen as well as offshore wind. Our ports are well positioned to serve as import hubs, and with our limited surface in Belgium, it is feasible to build a pipeline system and supply green hydrogen, not only to our Belgian industry, but also to the industry of our neighboring countries, such as the Netherlands, of course. We feel it is important to have regular studies like this one, showing us the state of affairs as it allows us to steer policy where it is most needed. Conducting the study also pointed us to a lack of data in some fields. This stresses the importance of monitoring in a dynamic sector. Now a little bit on the development of a hydrogen market. Regional cooperation will be further necessary in order to reach the climate objectives. There are already elements in place that facilitate the development of a regional hydrogen market in Northwest Europe. As just mentioned, Belgium plays an important role in this matter, namely by interconnecting with neighboring countries through its envisaged hydrogen transmission backbone and the presence of privately owned hydrogen pipelines. The further investigation and development of infrastructure, i.e. of an open access hydrogen backbone that in time connects to different regions, will be crucial to evolve to a well-functioning regional hydrogen market. In this regard, Belgium is looking at how to roll out such a backbone, taking the existing transport infrastructure into account as much as possible and contribute to the development for the benefit of the Belgian energy market and industry. One of the first steps will be the establishment of a legal and regulatory framework for the development of a hydrogen and CO2, that's a difficult one, again, hydrogen and CO2 backbone in Belgium. It is important to note here that Belgium will be highly dependent on the import of hydrogen or hydrogen carriers like methanol, ammonia, etc. Keeping this in mind, there is a need for strategic partnerships with both neighboring countries, regions, as well as countries with a large potential of cheap renewable energy who can supply green hydrogen. The demand and supply from this industry can be coupled through the hydrogen backbone. An active role of the Belgian ports as energy hubs and hydrogen clusters, hydrogen or hydrogen carriers are an important step to decarbonizing the hard-to-abate sectors in countries as well as heavy-duty transport, in addition to electrification where possible. Coordination will be essential to harmonize the different regional plans in a harmonized manner, as well as to connect the different markets. Regarding the Belgian ambitions, an exploratory study has been finalized and will be published and presented on the 18th of May of this year, and a federal hydrogen vision is being worked out, and we expect it later this year. Thank you very much for granting me the opportunity to highlight all this, and over to you again. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jan. We look forward to the publication of that study in May. I don't know about you, but it feels like we really have done a great virtual tour around Northwestern Europe in our panel. And with that, we have our final speaker from the panel today, Mr. Tudor Constantinescu, who serves both as a principal advisor in the European Commission and leads the Commission's work on hydrogen, but also Tudor is an important driving force in the Clean Energy Ministerial Hydrogen initiative, representing the EC as one of the co-leads in that initiative. So my deep thanks to you, Tudor, for all of the work that you do there. Massive strides that the Commission has taken on hydrogen, particularly given the focus on the Green Deal. And so we're really looking forward to hearing what you have to say today. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dan. And thank you also to the IA, to all the colleagues for the invitation today, and to the Dutch government for supporting this study, which I would like to welcome as well. I think it's very relevant, also very timely. Actually supporting hydrogen and supporting the role of hydrogen in the European Green Deal, which aims at the end of the day to make Europe the first climate neutral continent by 2050. So in this 2050 perspective, we know that according to some forecasts, about half of our final energy consumption will be in electricity, but almost half will also be in the form of molecules. And it's important to decarbonize this part as well. And here hydrogen has a key enabling role. And therefore we give a lot of attention. And I'm very happy to see that now Northwestern Europe, which has really indeed a huge potential from all points of view, not only for production, but also for the use, also for deployment of renewables, also for industrial capacities development, for supporting our industrial strategies, it's really engaged into this journey. And your study helps to identify and to point to the main priorities into these areas. This is particularly important because at European level, as you know, and following our strategy, we have very ambitious targets, 6 gigawatts by 2024 and 40 gigawatts of renewable hydrogen production by 2030. And we also have targets of 10 million tons for 2030 of renewable hydrogen. This is very ambitious. And for this, we have a roadmap which includes all the different aspects from investment agenda, regulation, R&D, international aspects. And in this context, we have developed also the hydrogen valleys. And I'm very happy that some of these hydrogen valleys started to develop and to prove the concept can be real and efficient in Northwestern Europe, particularly Netherlands. This is very much in line with the energy integration strategy, which we have developed at the same time with the hydrogen strategy, and which we give a key role in the future development of the energy system. And this is particularly important, and the North Sea offers a great opportunity in this respect also for boosting renewable and offshore renewable for production of hydrogen. So the study actually underlines, and I'm very happy to see that the current pipeline of projects in Europe may not be sufficient to meet national ambitions, and acknowledges, and we also acknowledge the need maybe to import renewable hydrogen in Europe. And again, all the coastal areas and the port facilities can very much help into this. And under the hydrogen initiative under SEM, we plan to launch this ports coalition, which will aim to also support these efforts. Now, I have to say that the study also points to other important aspects which are important for Europe as well. And I have to say the international cooperation in particular, and the structured energy dialogue we have with the US, with Japan, with North Africa, with South Korea, with India, it's very important. And in the context of the International Partnership for Hydrogen Economy, which Norway is chairing now, we have a task force to analyze the certification and to identify what is renewable low carbon hydrogen and how to actually, through this certification, not to create barriers, but on the contrary, to have the necessary transparency to develop international trade. So in this respect, we'll also try to identify in the same hydrogen initiative what the global objectives are in the various parts of the world and in various countries. At the same time, I take note that the study actually identifies four priorities, which are very important for us as well. So the work on cross-border projects and the important projects of common interest. I'm very happy to hear all what I heard today from the various countries is important updates. Also the need to develop a regional market with common standards and rules, the certification, which I was referring before, and on which we are working also in the context of revision now of the Renewables Directive, but also all the delegated acts, which are still under preparation. And of course, to design a strategy to address emissions from existing grey hydrogen production. Finally, let me recall the research and development activities. We'll have now in plan to launch the Clean Hydrogen Partnership, a follow-up to the fuel cells and hydrogen joint undertaking with a reinforced budget under the Horizon Europe. And this will contribute to develop new projects, new demonstrations, new hydrogen valleys, and in which clearly is that Northwestern Europe will play a very important role. Thank you very much to all and to you for the invitation today. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Tudor. Your work in the Commission really does set a great example for many others to follow. And just to say, it's been a really interesting event today, but also do delve into the report. I know that the presentation can only ever share the kind of edited highlights, but there are always many more great insights in the report itself. Also, as we've heard in the panel, there is simply so much action happening in this region to fast track the deployment of hydrogen and so many key takeaways. Certainly just a couple from me is the importance of collaboration. Collaboration is key to make the best use of utilizing the unused renewable energy potential that the region has to offer, which through collaborative regulations, development of markets, common standards, thinking about infrastructure planning and use. We also heard about the need to scale up of both demand and supply, and as I said, the related infrastructure, some of which is already happening and taking place and will certainly help to bring down the costs. And finally, for me at the SEM Secretariat, I feel that there are many lessons here, but also benefit and bring to other regions around the world and from within our membership. And so I hope this starts a really excellent conversation in this regard. So with this, and for final words and conclusion, I hand over to my great friend, Mr. Noé van Holst, who is currently the chair of IPHE. And I'm sometimes tempted to call him Noé van Hydrogen. So central is he to the international efforts in this space. Noé has really been one of the initial brainchilds of this collaboration while he was in the Dutch government, but has really led the way in so many areas in terms of international collaboration and regional collaboration on this important issue. I look forward to your thoughts, Noé, and do tell us what you think, how we can move forward from here. Over to you, and just thank you for everyone for joining us today, and I'll leave it to Noé to give the final word. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Dan. I hope you can hear me. Yes, great. I hope that my neighbors also will stay quiet because they are drilling every day. So I hope they will shut up for a moment. But anyway, Dan, you are too kind, of course, to me. But let me share with you some key points that that I take away from the study and from actually the previous discussion. I'll give you 4 points. My first point is not surprising, and I can simply echo what many people have said in also lastly, Tudor, the huge potential in the Northwestern European market. I mean, I kind of already knew about it, but if you read the report, you really see it with all the numbers that and all the plans and the strategies that the countries have around the North Sea. Really incredibly impressive. And I would go as far as to say, and Tudor may not like it if I say it that way, but if if hydrogen is not going to work in the Northwestern European market, then I mean, we can forget about the success of the European strategy. I mean, it's that critical and it's that important that these countries indeed succeed in their plans. So important in terms of the weight that they have in the marketplace. The encouraging news, though, with the potential is, and that's what we heard from, for instance, from Ulrich, and it completely aligns with my impressions. That, I mean, we are in a strange situation where, yes, the potential is huge, but the good news is that there is a tremendous momentum. A lot of countries have already allocated, seeing this potential, have allocated public funds, substantial public funds. Plus, the great news is that there is so much private money ready to be invested on a large scale, not only from the energy companies, not only from the majors and the wind offshore companies, but also from equity funds, from private investment funds. They are basically all ready to jump in with big billions and billions. So it's up to the governments now to create that regulatory framework and the right appropriate support mechanisms to basically channel that in the right direction. So I think we have a unique opportunity there. It's my first point. So the huge potential and ready to basically harvest. Number two, the North Sea. Look at the North Sea. The North Sea, of course, used to be the big powerhouse for oil and gas, and still is to a large extent. But now I think we can start looking at the North Sea in a completely different light. The North Sea, which already, of course, is so important in wind offshore, also even globally speaking. The North Sea can also be the powerhouse for low carbon and green hydrogen production. And that's kind of a new way of seeing. You look at the same infrastructure that is now for oil and gas that can be repurposed for hydrogen transportation. You look at the platforms, they can be utilized for also hydrogen offshore production. And then you have the Danish example of the artificial islands. Well, that's also going to be part of the future. So artificial islands in the North Sea for hydrogen, offshore hydrogen production. It's incredible what kind of, if you start to think about it, how the North Sea can be turned into an incredible powerhouse for the energy transition, including for low carbon hydrogen. But then, and that's my third point, we do need to kind of give political direction to that cooperation. So yes, it's true, there is already, luckily enough, North Sea energy cooperation with the countries around the North Sea. But to be honest, I haven't seen much really big political drive there yet. But I think it's time to develop that political drive from the North Sea energy cooperation, the countries around the North Sea. Why? Also because it includes, and this may be something which some people don't want to talk too much about it, but it also includes countries like the UK and Norway, which are outside of the European Union. But I think it is time also that we put ourselves past the post-Brexit trauma, so to speak, and that we develop cooperation also based on the geography and on the facts on the ground. And the facts on the ground are that these countries are around the North Sea. We have tremendous cooperation potential, but we are not doing it that much, to be honest. If you look at the real concrete cross-border projects in the North Sea, they are really relatively limited. And I think we could develop that much more. That's the unused potential in terms of international cooperation, which is my next point. That really the challenge is not only to do everything that you can in your own country. Of course, that is fantastic. But if you at the same time develop that international cooperation, as some of you have indeed rightly stressed, then you multiply the effectiveness of your national efforts tremendously. So really developing at the same time this international cooperation, and I'm talking then about really concrete projects, for instance, on infrastructure that many of you have mentioned, so incredibly important. It's not only, it's the hydrogen backbone, but it's also, because we are including low carbon, hydrogen, it's also CCS pipelines. It is also these artificial islands. It is using storage capacity for CCU, carbon capture, etc. So that's all going to be extremely important. Then my last point then for the IEA, I think this is a fantastic report together with SEEP, but it should not be a one-off thing. I think we could develop, and you could think about really regular market outlooks where you create a transparency in the market. What is happening? What are the targets? But also what is the achievement on the ground, so that you can really have a signal for the market on how this is developing. And last but not least, Dan, as you were saying, it can also be an example for the for other regions in the world within the SEM initiative, that you see how this cooperation can be developed and how you can create a transparency in the market of what is happening. And I think that could be very helpful for others. My neighbors start to drill now, so that's the sign for me to start. Thank you very much for all your attention, and please make sure that you do your bit to beat the scenarios that you have seen in the report. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Noe, and thank you very much to your neighbours for holding off at least until the end of your remarks. Incredible insights from you as ever. I really hope everyone takes every remark that you made there absolutely to heart. It just remains for me to say thank you to the IEA, to Clingendael, to the government of the Netherlands, to all of our panelists, to all of our participants today. It's been a very well attended event. For attending this really exceptional webinar. Do absolutely check out the report. Thank you for all of those who've been commenting in the chat and engaging in the chat as well. But once again, thanks again. I hope you found it a really useful webinar. Thank you.